In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to help you find the perfect spot to relocate to just outside of Toronto that's right for you to relocate, buy a home, and raise a family. We'll be discussing everything you need to know about the top 10 Toronto suburbs on the west side, from their pros and cons to the real estate. So by the time you finish watching this video here, you can immediately eliminate 90% of the suburbs and focus on the top 1 or 2 that is the right fit for you and your family. Now, if you want to learn more about each one of these communities we're discussing, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I create videos going over all the pros and cons and the best and worst neighborhoods of each and every single community. But before we jump in to the top 10 Toronto suburbs to relocate to, let's first discuss how to get around back to Toronto. Alrighty guys, so here we have a map of Toronto, and this side we're going to be focusing on the west side. Now, there's a few major highways that will get you back to Toronto. The first one is right here, and this is the QEW. You have the 427 that heads a bit more north, the 401 right here, which is the most northern highway, as well as the 403 right here. And in suburbs, like right here on the edge of Oakville and Mississauga, the 403 and the QEW merge. And then the last highway you need to know about if you're thinking about relocating close to Toronto but want easy access but not the hustle and bustle right at your doorstep would be the 407, which is a toll private highway that you can take as well, and is definitely the least trafficked highway out of all the highways we just discussed. But with all that said, let's dive on in and first talk about the number 1 region just outside of Toronto I know a lot of families are relocating to, and that is Mississauga. As Mississauga, depending on where you live, is roughly a 40-minute drive from Toronto and has one of the largest populations out of all the suburbs we're going to be talking about today, with a population in 2024 estimated to be 780,000 people. Now, the 3 major pros when you're thinking about relocating to Mississauga and why so many people choose to live here is first and foremost the multicultural and diverse community. As similar to Toronto, Mississauga offers a variety of different cultures to choose from, as over 50% of the residents are foreign born, and it was ranked within the top 10 of the most multicultural cities within Ontario, with over 100 native languages spoken as well. So if you have kids, your kids will definitely be in a diverse class, but also that means if you're relocating from anywhere in the world, you can definitely find a community that is right for you within Mississauga, both in terms of a variety of cultural events that will happen here year around, but as well as a very diverse food scene. And that actually brings me on to the next pro of living in Mississauga, and that is the amazing shopping and amazing food scene it has to offer you. So within Mississauga, you're gonna find Square One, which is the largest shopping mall in all of Ontario and the second largest in Canada, behind the West Edmonton Mall, with more than 360 stores to choose from. And then a couple other shopping options that you'll need to visit when living in Mississauga would be the Dixie Outlet Mall, known for its outlet deals and clearance items, or also the Erin Mills and Heartland town centers that also offer a variety of options to choose from. And because you have one of the largest populations and the proximity to Toronto, brings us on to the next pro, and that is the amazing employment opportunities this city provides. As out of all these cities we're going to be discussing today, this here is going to have the most amount of job opportunities for you to choose from, not only because it's on the larger side, but also because many companies choose to have their headquarters here, not only due to its proximity of Toronto, but also the Pearson International Airport, which is the main airport just in the GTA, as you'll find the headquarters of Microsoft, Walmart, PepsiCo, and many other large companies residing here. Now, that actually brings me on to the first con of living in Mississauga, and that's the proximity to the airport. So it is nice to be close to the airport if you're going to be traveling for vacation or business on a regular basis. However, on the flip side, depending on where you're living in Mississauga, you will notice a lot of air traffic noise. Now, of course, the further you move away from the airport, the longer the drive is to it, but also the less amount of noise pollution that you're going to be getting from all the loud jets that fly overhead. Then the next con of living in Mississauga happens to be the traffic jams and low walkability that this city provides, as this city, when it was developed, was primarily developed as a driving city. However, that was a long time ago, and the city has absolutely exploded since then, and that creates a lot of traffic jams, both within the highways that lead you to Toronto and the rest of the GTA, but also just in terms of the city streets. Now, with that said, one of the pros about living in Mississauga when it comes to the driving is this is the only city that gives you easy access to all the major highways we just discussed. So no matter where you're living in Mississauga, you're only just a couple minutes away from a highway entrance. Now, one of the other major cons of living in Mississauga happens to be the expensive real estate costs. Because this city here is the closest one to Toronto, the real estate costs are reflected in this. As in total, this will be in the top 3 of the different suburbs to purchase a detached home due to its proximity. Now, with that said, Mississauga is quite vast, and you will find a large selection of different detached homes to choose from. So if we look at how the real estate breaks down in Mississauga, you can see that in the last 12 months, about 36% of the sales were detached home, another 28% were condo apartments, and then the rest were townhomes to choose from, with the median detached home sale price being $1,370,000, the townhome median price just being over $900,000, and the condo median price being at $580,000. So here you can see where Mississauga's detached medium home size has been for the last 10 years. And as we go throughout this video, we'll be completing this graph here, adding in all the other cities we're going to be talking about in today's video, so you get a real grasp of where you can find a detached home within your price range. Then the next area you need to consider if you're looking for an amazing suburb just outside of Toronto is going to be Oakville. Now, Oakville is located right here, and it's just a little bit west of Mississauga, but as you can see, is much smaller, but that also comes with some amazing pros. So as the first one happens to be, it's only about another 40-minute drive to 50-minute drive to Union Station, with a population in 2024 being at 233,000. Now, one of the first pros I know many of my clients absolutely love about living in Oakville is the amazing schools. Now, all this data that we're going to be talking about is according to the Fraser Institute rankings that puts all the standardized tests in Ontario from grade 3, 6, and 9 into an index out of 10, with the provincial average being a 6. And I can tell you, just studying the Fraser Institute and helping a variety of clients relocate here over the past couple of years, many of my clients choose Oakville for this reason here, as pretty much no matter where you're living in Oakville, you're gonna find some amazing schools. As in total, there's 46 different elementary schools and 12 high schools offering a variety of streams of English, French, and gifted, and like I mentioned, routinely rank well above the Ontario provincial tests. Then in terms of post-secondary schools, you won't find any universities here. However, you will find Sheridan College. Then another pro I know so many families absolutely love living in Oakville is its safety, as Halton has been rated for over 24 years in a row, which Oakville is a part of the Halton region, if you don't know, as the safest region with more than 100,000 people. So Oakville is an absolutely great spot to raise a family because of the schools, because of the safety. Now, like I mentioned in all my videos, if you want to learn more about these school rankings or the safety directly from the source, I'll leave a link down below to give you easy access to the Fraser Institute as well as the Halton crime map. Then another pro about living in Oakville is while it is the size of a city, the town of Oakville, especially in the downtown core, has really tried to keep that town reminiscent feeling, as you're not going to notice many high-rise buildings in downtown Oakville. You'll find many charming streets and amazing festivals with a lot of friendly faces. Now, with this said, on the north side of Oakville, you're seeing a lot of development, both in terms of new detached homes, new townhomes, and lots of condos, typically along Dundas and Trafalgar. Now, with that said, that actually brings me on to the first con of living in Oakville, and that is the expensive real estate to choose from, as here is going to be the most expensive spot to buy real estate in all of the top 10 Toronto suburbs we're going to be talking about today. So if you want to learn more about the real estate we'll be diving into it deep. But then another con about living in Oakville is the lack of public transit, as you will find a few buses to get around Oakville. However, when compared to Mississauga or some of the other suburbs we're going to be talking about in just a moment, it is not going to be very good, especially when you compare it to Toronto. However, it's very similar to other ones like Burlington that we're going to be discussing in a second. So it really does depend on how you compare it to. However, with that said, if you're looking just to get to Toronto for your job, like Union Station, you're going to find two great GO train stations in Oakville. You'll find Oakville GO, which is on Trafalgar, and Bronte GO, which is basically on Third Line, that has a train going into Union Station and back every 30 minutes. Then the next con about living in Oakville is the lack of shopping, as in total you'll find the Oakville Place Mall right in the middle of Oakville and a variety of large plazas to choose from. So it's not to say that you won't find all your basic amenities in Oakville. You definitely will. However, when compared to Mississauga shopping or some of the other suburbs we're going to be talking about in just a sec, it definitely doesn't stack up as well. Then let's go back to the real estate and really give you a great breakdown. So in the last 12 months, you can see with 50% being detached homes, then you'll see a good amount of townhomes and condo homes selling, and then about 17% being condo apartments. Now, like I mentioned, this is going to be the most expensive area to purchase real estate in the Toronto suburbs we're going to be discussing today, as the median sold price for a detached home in the last 12 months was $1,764,000. The median sale price for townhomes was $1,074,000, and the median sale price for condos was $620,000. And here on this chart, you can see how Oakville's median detached sold price has compared to Mississauga for the last 10 years. Then, if you love all the pros associated with Oakville, but are looking for an area that's a little bit more affordable, but still very similar, that brings us on to the next area that you can look at, which is Burlington. So Burlington is located, again, just a little bit more westward of Oakville right here. And it was really developed in a similar time period as Oakville. Now, with that said, the typography is slightly different. As yes, you're both on Lake Ontario with most, but in Oakville, you're going to notice a lot more ravines and crescents to choose from and then go and explore. With that said, Burlington also has some amazing parks. Now, Burlington is about a 1 hour drive away from Toronto and a population sitting at 195,000 people. Now, one of the very first pros of living in Burlington happens to be the parks, as you will find many notable parks here to enjoy. In my opinion, it's got the best waterfront park in Spencer Smith Park. It's got the largest beach in Burlington Beach, which is fantastic for relaxing on Lake Ontario during those summer months. You'll find Bronte Creek, which is actually a part of both Burlington and Oakville, as it's a large conservation area with many hiking trails for you to explore. Then out in rural Burlington, you'll find Mount Nemo, which is an amazing spot, especially to go during the fall times, as you can get some spectacular views. And then on the furthest west side of Burlington, you'll find Royal Botanical Gardens, which offers a variety of different unique gardens you need to check out, as well as countless number of community centers, outdoor pools, and ice rinks to enjoy within Burlington. And then similarly to Oakville, according to the Fraser Institute, brings us on to the next pro, and that is the amazing schools. As like Oakville, all the schools pretty much in Burlington continuously rank above the provincial average, as in total you're going to find 40 different elementary schools to choose from, some public and some Catholic, as well as 10 different high schools to choose from. Now here, you're not going to find any post-secondary colleges or universities. However, you will find McMaster's DeGroote School of Business if you're looking to get your MBA just right beside the highway in Burlington. Then one of the other pros I know I used to love so much when living in Burlington is the amazing events, festivals, and local gems to explore, as you have the largest rib fest happening every Labor Day weekend in Burlington to enjoy mouth-watering ribs, cold beer, and amazing pulled pork. But you'll also find the Sound of Music, Canada Day's Festival, and the Festival of Lights all taking place on, in my opinion, like I mentioned, the best waterfront park in the GTA, the Spencer Smith Smith Park. Then some amazing local restaurants you'll need to check out when living in Burlington. And I would have to say most of the local gems are going to be more on the south side of Burlington versus the north side. But you have the Son of a Peach Pizzeria for amazing pizza. Zesty Pita, which was actually rated the #1 shawarma place in Burlington. You have JC's Hot Bagels for, in my opinion, the best breakfast sandwiches in all of Burlington. Or pure and simple, to go get a sit-down breakfast. You have Sunshine Donuts to make your Sunday a little extra special, as well as an amazing brewery in the Nickelbrook Brewery. Now, one of the cons associated with living in Burlington is some of the industrial pockets. In particular, you're going to find the most amount of industrial pockets just lining the QEW, typically more on the south side, but a little bit on the north side as well to choose from. Now, two notable areas that I would want to point out to you is first, you have the Fearman's Pork Factory right on Appleby line right there, as well as the wastewater treatment plant just beside the Skyway as well. And then another con about living in Burlington is there's not much nightlife. And this kind of goes actually for Oakville as well, as you're not going to find many clubs to enjoy. However, with that said, a lot of my clients don't mind as they got families. They're not looking to go to clubbing. But what you do have on the flip side is many great restaurants, like I was mentioning, where you can grab a beer, grab a bite to eat, and catch up with some old friends. Then the next con about living in Burlington happens to be the real estate costs, which actually brings me on to the next section, the real estate. So if we look at where the real estate sold in Burlington in the last 12 months, we can see that it was primarily detached homes, with about 22% being condo apartments, and then the remaining 23% were townhomes selling. Now, where the majority of these were selling, where the median detached home sale price was $1,320,000. The townhome median sold price was $860,000, and condos median sold price was $587,000. And as you can see here, Burlington is definitely a lot more affordable than Oakville, a little bit more affordable than Mississauga, but pretty much on par with the Mississauga prices. So if you are interested in making the move to Mississauga, Burlington, Oakville, or the other suburbs that we're going to be discussing in just a moment, send me and my team a message today, regardless if you're thinking about making the move in 60 days or in 6 months. We've been helping a variety of families relocate here over the past couple of years and absolutely love it. So any questions you have about any one of the areas or what you can get for the real estate, send me and my team a message today. Then another area you might want to consider in the top 10 Toronto suburbs just of the west of Toronto is Milton. Now, Milton, as you can see, is located right here, kind of north of Oakville, a little bit northeast of Burlington. And here, unfortunately, you don't get the water. However, there's some amazing pros. Now, the first pro is it's only about an hour drive away from Toronto, and it's a slightly smaller city with only 152,000 people in it. And one of the pros, similarly to Burlington, is the amazing parks. As while you don't have those waterfront parks, you still have some great geography to choose from, as you have the Kelso Conservation Area, which is a large conservation area that offers many different hiking trails, a beach to relax on. But perhaps my favorite thing about Kelso Conservation Area is you're going to find the Glen Eden Skiing Hill here that you and your kids can enjoy in the winter months. But then another hiking spot you'll need to enjoy is the Rattlesnake Point Conservation Area or the Hilton Falls Conservation Area. Two great areas to go see some stunning views and amazing waterfalls. Then within the community of Milton, you're going to find a variety of neighborhood parks, as these were developed really primarily in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and a little bit into the 2020s. So each neighborhood is going to have a variety of parks to choose from, as well as a couple of community centers like the Milton Community Leisure Center. Here, you can either drop in during their variety of sporting times, get some laps done in the pool, or have your kids enjoy the indoor pool and go down the slide. Then another pro about living in Milton is the safety, because Burlington, Oakville, and Milton are all a part of Halton, and this applies. Now, like I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in getting all the data about the crime that is happening in Milton, I'll leave a link down below to the Halton crime map for you to check out. But then the next pro about living in Milton is because you're around a lot of farm fields, you're going to find amazing local farms to enjoy. 3 in particular would be the Spring Ridge Farm, which has been an absolute staple in the community as well as for my family, and it's been going on since 1970 and has a variety of events happening year around, whether it's in the spring, summer, or fall time to go and enjoy. But then you'll also find the Chuglings Entertainment Farm, where your kids can go enjoy what it's like on the farm, go see what the nature is, go feed some farm family animals, or pick some apples. But perhaps one of the more Instagram-worthy spots to enjoy when living in Milton is the Terra Blue Lavender Farm, where you can just go see this amazing field of purple lavender with their now famous store. Now, every single summer, thousands of people come to visit here, and you would have to too. And one of the other pros about all these local farms is amazing local fresh produce that you're going to be finding at the Milton Farmers Market that opens every single Saturday morning from May to October and finds a variety of great local vendors, local farms to go and support. Now, one of the cons I hear from a lot of my clients who have relocated to Milton or have already been living in Milton for my friends and family is the construction and growing pains. As over the past 10 years or so, Milton was one of the fastest growing communities in all of Canada. And as a result, that creates some growing pains. In particular, you're going to be hearing that the commute time into Toronto is definitely bottlenecked, especially along the 401, but also within Milton, you're going to find Derry and James Snow have the most traffic during the rush hour because these are where the 401 entrances are. However, one of the things Milton is doing to alleviate this is they're doing some work to add an additional 401 entrance right on Britannia. Then another con about living in Milton is the shopping options. Now, I would say it is probably similar-ish to Oakville shopping options, however, less than Burlington and Mississauga shopping options. As within Milton, you're going to find the Milton Mall, which is nice to have a mall, but it's not the most impressive mall that we're going to be discussing. However, with that said, you have the Toronto Premium Outlets, which is really not really located in Milton. It's just outside of Milton, about a 10-minute drive away, with many great discounts from every single shop, every single brand you can think of. Then in downtown Milton, you're not going to find many shopping options as well. However, you'll find some great local gems to enjoy. Then the final con you need to know before moving to Milton is the lack of employment center. Because this is one of the smaller communities we're going to be discussing today, I know a lot of my clients absolutely love Milton because it's great for raising a family, it's great for its schools, great for its parks, just great family atmosphere. However, most of those clients have jobs in Mississauga, work remotely, or have to travel somewhere else in the GTA on a regular basis, and that's why the employment opportunities in Milton just is lacking. However, with that said, you're only about an hour drive from Toronto at the worst. Now, in terms of the real estate and how it breaks down in Milton, as you can see, about 45% were detached homes that sold in the last 12 months. Another 36% were townhomes, and then about 13% were condo apartments to choose from, with the median detached home sale price being just at $1,256,000, the median townhomes being at $915,000, and condos selling at $630,000. And as you can see on this graph here, it's the most affordable area to purchase a detached home in the last 10 years we've covered so far. However, if you're looking for an area that's even more affordable than Milton, then you need to consider Halton Hills. And that's our next area, as this here is just a little bit north of Milton right here. And Halton Hills is actually made up of 2 major areas. You have Georgetown right here and Acton right here. And as you can see, Halton Hills is going to be a little bit smaller than Milton, with its population at only 67,000 people, and it's about an hour and 10-minute drive into Toronto. Now, one of the pros about living here, or pros or cons depending on how you look at it, is the small town charm. Because this is on the smaller side, you're definitely going to see a lot of familiar faces at the events and festivals. However, some of the amenities are lacking, especially in Acton. Georgetown, you still are going to get your basic amenities. However, you'll routinely find yourself either driving to Mississauga or Milton to get some more unique amenities. And then another pro about living in Halton Hills is the traffic, as here you have the most important roadway as Highway 7, also locally known as Guelph Road, that really connects Georgetown with Brampton east to west as well as to Acton. However, with that said, you don't really get access to the major highways here, which is definitely a con. However, when you're in Georgetown or Acton driving around, there's pretty much no traffic for the most part. Then one of the other pros about living in Halton Hills is the property taxes, as this property tax rate is only at approximately 0.85. So it's kind of middle of the pack, but definitely less compared to some other regions we're going to be discussing shortly. Now, one of the cons about living in Halton Hills is the shopping options. I cannot mention this more, especially if you're living more on the rural side or outside of Georgetown, more in Acton. You're not going to find many shopping options here to choose from. You will find a few along Guelph Street, as well as the larger shopping mall in Georgetown at the Georgetown Marketplace with more than 80 shops to choose from. However, this is going to be less than Milton, Oakville, Burlington, Mississauga, and the majority of other areas we're going to be talking about in today's video. However, with that said, you can still find many local gems, whether it's the Heather's Bakery to enjoy a coffee, pick up some sweet bread and some sweet treats, but also you can find the Copper Kettle Pub to enjoy some authentic pub food, or also the Silver Creek Social House Cafe to enjoy espresso and get some work done. Now, two of the cons you've already heard me talk about, and kind of go hand in hand with a small town feel, is there's not much public transit and there's not much nightlife in this community here. Now, if you want to learn more about the different pros and cons and the complete list that usually covers the minimum, the top 10, but more likely the top 20 pros and cons of living in Halton Hills, Burlington, Oakville, Milton, Mississauga, and the surrounding regions we're going to be talking about in today's video, make sure to hit the subscribe button or search on my channel, as I'm sure I've already posted a video going over the top pros and cons you need to know about in a lot more detail. Now, with that said, if we look at how Halton Hills real estate breaks down in detail, we can see that it's primarily detached homes. At 72% of the sales in the last 12 months were detached homes. Very little condo apartments, as that was only 4%, and a few different townhomes to choose from. Now, with that said, the median detached home sold price was $1,999,000. The median townhome sold price is $805,000. And the condo sold price is at $635,000. However, not many options to choose from. And as you can see, how Halton Hills compares to the other areas we've already discussed, it is the most affordable area to choose from. But it's not the most affordable in all the areas we're going to be covering today, as the next area that you might want to consider is Guelph, Ontario. And where Guelph is located, if we just zoom out here, it's definitely a little bit more westward and a bit more north of Halton Hills, of Milton, of Burlington, and Oakville. So it's going to be a little bit longer of a drive, as it's about an hour 30 into Toronto, and a population sitting at 180,000 people. Now, one of the pros about living in Guelph is its safety. So, as according to 2023's data, Guelph was rated by Statistics Canada as one of the lowest crime severity indexes, the 8th lowest in Canada and the 4th lowest in Ontario. And this is because of the small town feel Guelph really offers you. However, with that said, you can find on a variety of other sites that Guelph is rated even higher in the safety, whether it's top 3 or top 5 in Canada as well. Now, one of the other pros about living in Guelph is the charming downtown area, as here you're going to find a lot of buildings that have some great character and amazing local businesses to choose from, as Guelph was first established back in 1827 and as a result has some deep heritage roots, including one of the more spectacular churches in Ontario you need to enjoy. But perhaps what I personally like more about Guelph's downtown location is the amazing local gems, as you'll find the Red Brick Cafe, a community staple where you can grab a coffee, grab a croissant, and stroll down the downtown area. Or you can go to the Boathouse Tea Room and Ice Cream to enjoy a tea or an ice cream and walk beside the river in Guelph. But you'll also find the Greek Garden, Lady Glazed Donuts, Bon Gusto, Royal Electric Bar, and so many more great businesses to enjoy in the downtown area of Guelph. Then one of the cons about living in Guelph is the city growing pains, as one of the complaints I've heard a lot of clients talk about Guelph is the hospital wait times are quite long, and currently this is one of the biggest issues with Guelph that my clients are having, as at the beginning of 2024 the average wait time was 5 hours to see a doctor. However, they're working to help combat this issue, as they're currently expanding out the hospital in the coming years. Then another con about living in Guelph is the lack of employment. Now, this really does depend on what employment sector you're looking for. As if you're looking for something in manufacturing, education, there's going to be lots of options to choose from, as you have the University of Guelph in Guelph, but also you have many great employers like the Auto Parts of Linamar here to choose from. However, with that said, the other headquarters, you're going to be commuting regularly to Toronto or the GTA, or also Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, as Guelph is relatively pretty close to the KWC area. Then another con about living in Guelph is the inner public transit systems, as you will find a basic bus route with over 21 different routes to choose from. However, majority of Guelph, you're going to be very car dependent. And in terms of the GO train, you will find one GO train station here that will give you easy access to Toronto's Union Station in about an hour and 30 minutes. However, with that said, the availability of this public transit option is lacking compared to some of the other regions like Burlington, like Oakville, that have a train every 30 minutes. It's only a couple of trains a day currently in Guelph. Then if we look at how the real estate breaks down in Guelph, we can see that it was primarily detached homes that were selling in the past 12 months, as that made up 55% of the sales. Then you have about condo townhomes making about 22% of the sales, and condo apartments about 16.73%. But here is going to be some of the most affordable detached homes to choose from in a great community, as you're going to find the average detached home in Guelph selling at $882,000, the average townhome selling at $715,000, and the average condos selling at $530,000. And as you can see here, it's well below all the other median sale prices for the last 10 years that we've talked about so far. Then another city you may want to consider moving to just outside of Toronto, but if you still want to have that big city life with many great amenities to choose from, is Hamilton. So Hamilton is located right here, just kind of on the other side of Lake Ontario in the Golden Horseshoe area, just a little bit westward of Burlington. You can see Guelph is up there. Now, Hamilton is going to widely vary depending on where you're living in it. Because Hamilton is a large city like Mississauga, you're going to find many different great regions to choose from, which we'll talk about in just a moment. However, in total, you can expect an hour and 20-minute drive into Toronto, and the metro area of Hamilton has a population of 787,000 people. Now, this really does depend, like I mentioned, where you're living in Hamilton is going to give you a different vibe. So a couple of different regions to consider. You have Waterdown right here. That's a small town. Very similar vibes to Georgetown, Burlington, Oakville, Milton right here. Then you have Dundas, that's surrounded by a variety of nature trails right here. Very low inventory and low turnover to choose from. You have Ancaster over here, some regarded as the best neighborhood in all of Hamilton to buy a home in. You have the Hamilton Mountain here, which offers a lot of great real estate opportunities to choose from. You have Central Hamilton, which has all the amazing local gems you'll find in Hamilton, as well as where its roots of the Steel City are really established. Then you'll find Stony Creek over on this end right here as well to choose from. And then Glanbrook over here, that is a part of Binbrook and Mount Hope, that has some brand new budding new communities with lots of new construction to choose from as well. Now, one of the other pros about living in Hamilton is the amazing food scene. And I would say other than Toronto and maybe Mississauga, but I would rival Hamilton's food scene against Mississauga's, is how many local gems you have to enjoy. And this is one of my personal favorite things about living in Hamilton, as within Hamilton, just to rattle off a couple of favorites you need to enjoy. First, you got Granddad's Donuts for some amazing classic donuts. You got Cowabunga Pizza, which is the best cheese pizza in the world. And it's not just my opinion. They actually won this award at the Las Vegas Pizza Expo. You have Artie's for amazing food conscious sandwiches, Copper Kettle Cafe for amazing apple fritters, the Memphis Fire Barbecue for the best rack of ribs or pulled pork that's been on many different shows in the Food Network. You have the Old Bagel House for, in my opinion, the best Montreal-style bagels in the entire GTA. Golden Tendies for the best fried chicken in the entire city. Speedy Subs for that classic cold-cut 12-inch sub. West End Diner for a classic diner breakfast, as well as a variety of breweries to choose from as well. From the Collective Arts to Merit Brewery to Grain and Grit and Clifford's, which was actually rated the best brewery in 2019. Then another pro about living in Hamilton is the amazing public transit. As similarly to Mississauga, I would say it's as good as Toronto, but out of all the cities we're comparing today, Central Hamilton, the Hamilton Mountain, is going to offer you the best buses to choose from. Great GO train network, as you have the West Harbour GO, Hamilton GO, and Confederation GO all taking you into Toronto. But then you'll also find the Sobe bikes, which you can easily rent one and get around the last few kilometers within Hamilton. Then also within Hamilton, you're going to be having the International Airport here that's tucked close to Mount Hope. So for the majority of areas you're going to be living in Hamilton, you're not going to notice the air pollution noise you're going to be getting within Mississauga. Hamilton, it's a bit more out there, so you're not going to be noticing it. However, with that said, you do get some great flights going across Canada, as well as a few destinations down south to enjoy. Then another pro about living in Hamilton is the amazing schools, not only because you have McMaster as well as Mohawk College right within Hamilton, but you have a variety of schools to choose from, with more than 50 of them ranking above the provincial average according to the Fraser Institute. And then one other one I'll quickly mention of the pros in Hamilton is the amazing healthcare, because of McMaster Sick Kids, Juravinski Hospital, and St. Joseph Hospital all were rated in the top 20 in Canada. But perhaps McMaster Sick Kids was definitely perhaps the most notable, as this was rated the second best children's hospital, only behind Toronto Sick Kids Hospital. And then one last pro I'll quickly wrap up in Hamilton here is the amazing green spaces and waterfalls it has to offer you, as Hamilton is the waterfall capital of the world, and as a result you have a variety of waterfalls to enjoy, whether it's at Spencer's Gorge with Tooth Falls, Webster's Falls, as well as stunning views from Dundas Peak to Tiffany Falls to Albion Falls. But then you'll also find a variety of different parks to choose from 50 Point Conservation Area to Confederation Park to Coots Paradise to the Dundas Conservation Area, and so much more. Now, some of the cons you need to know before moving to Hamilton. First is where it gets its nickname, the Steel City, or the industrial areas that Hamilton has. Now, this is really going to be close to the Hamilton Harbor, and here is where you're going to be noticing the heavy amount of industry to choose from. However, like we discussed, Hamilton has a variety of different areas. You can live in Hamilton and never see this area here if you want to avoid it. Then the second con of living in Hamilton happens to be the one-way streets, the confusing roadways that downtown Hamilton especially has to offer. This is one thing my clients usually take a little bit to adjust to when driving around Hamilton. However, with that said, if you have your phone, you can easily punch something into Google Maps, and that will easily get you around and solve that problem there. And then one final con about living in Hamilton, and it really is based on a perspective, is its safety. Now, of course, this is going to widely vary depending on where you live in Hamilton, but if we look at the data by Statistics Canada in the crime index for 2023, we can see that Hamilton City has a crime severity index of 67.9, and the Hamilton metropolitan area has a crime index of 59.5. Now, what does that mean for context? Was it's basically the same as Toronto's crime severity index. However, it's a little bit lower than Vancouver, Montreal, Kitchener-Waterloo, and Calgary. However, it is higher than some of the regions we discussed, like Burlington, Oakville, and Milton, that we have just chatted about. However, with that said, since 2010, as you can see here, both the Hamilton City and the metropolitan area have been below the national crime rates for both the overall non-violent and violent crime rates. So rest assured, Hamilton is a very safe place to live, but wanted to include that here just so you have a perspective of how it compares some other cities. Now, of course, if you want to get more information about Hamilton's crime map, I'll leave a link down below for Hamilton's crime map link as well. Now, how the real estate breaks down in Hamilton is quite favorable, as in the past 12 months, it's primarily been detached homes. You have a few different townhomes to choose from, as well as condos. But the median detached home sold price is $820,000. And as you can see, it sells in a variety of different price ranges. The median townhome sold price was $710,000, and the condo sale price was $455,000. And as you can see, is now the most affordable area of all the regions we've talked about so far. Now, like I mentioned, Hamilton has a variety of distinct areas. Some of these areas here are going to be above the Hamilton average. Some of them are going to be below the Hamilton average. So reach out to me and my team if you want to learn everything about what it's like living in Hamilton and understand what areas of Hamilton we would recommend for your family. But the next area you may want to consider in the top 10 Toronto suburbs would be Grimsby. And as you can see where Grimsby is located, it's a little bit more eastward of Hamilton. So definitely a bit of a longer drive into Toronto. You're averaging about an hour 30, hour 40 minutes in. However, it's definitely got that small town charm, and it's only got a population of 29,000 people. Now, some of the pros are it has some amazing parks. In particular, you got Beamer Memorial Conservation Area, Nels Beach Park, Grimsby Beach, as well as the 50 Point Conservation Area right there. And one of the other pros I've really noticed when helping clients relocate to Grimsby is the neighbors seem to be super friendly. And I think this is something you get when you have that smaller population under 30,000 people. Then another pro about living in Grimsby happens to be the amazing wineries, as in total, you're gonna find 88 different wineries with a lot to choose from if you enjoy that glass of wine. Then some cons that you've already heard us discuss, but it's very similar to all the other small communities on this list here, is the limited employment options, the limited shopping, as while you will find some, there's not many options to choose from in Grimsby. You'll find the basics like Canadian Tire, the beer store, Sobeys, Shoppers Drug Mart. However, the majority of the time you're going to be visiting either St. Catharines or Hamilton. And in terms of the other negative is the lack of public transit, as Grimsby in this case here has no public transit to enjoy. Then how the real estate broke down in Grimsby, as you can see, it was primarily detached homes with a good amount of townhomes selling really in that Grimsby on the Lake or Casablanca's neighborhood, as well as a few condos primarily going to be in the downtown area of Grimsby or Grimsby on the Lake. Now, the median sold price for Grimsby was for detached homes $940,000, townhomes was $700,000, and condos was just sitting at $500,000. And as you can see here, Grimsby's a little bit more expensive to buy a home in compared to Hamilton and Guelph. However, more affordable than the other regions we've discussed so far. Then the ninth area on our list here of the top 10 suburbs just outside of Toronto on the west side you need to consider is the Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge region. Now, how this is located is it's a little bit west of Hamilton, a little bit north of Burlington, and west of Guelph, and it's this huge region right here. Now, really, it's 3 cities, but I've just combined them into one area here, as usually my clients interested in Kitchener are also interested in Waterloo, and are sometimes also interested in Cambridge right here. And you get easy access to the 401 that will take you into Mississauga. However, like I mentioned, it's a little bit longer of a drive, as typically here, you're about an hour 40, hour 50 into Toronto. Now, the population for the region of the Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge area is 706,000 people, with Kitchener having about 250, Waterloo about 150, and Cambridge also having about 150,000 people. Now, one of the pros about living in this area here is the amazing employment opportunities, especially in manufacturing, education, and tech, as this is sometimes referred to as the Silicon Valley of the North. And as a result, you have some big boys having their headquarters here, like Google, like Sun Life Financial, and BlackBerry, as well as some local startups. And that's why in the census data in 2021, it was found that 3/4 of the population actually work locally within the Tri-City or in Kitchener or Waterloo in other areas. Then another pro about living in the Kitchener Waterloo area is the amazing schools, not only because you have the University of Waterloo, Laurier's campus, as well as other great schools, but you'll find in total 54 different elementary schools, 8 high schools, both public and Catholic, offering a variety of English and French streams, usually ranking above the provincial averages as well. Then another pro about living in the KWC area is a variety of different fun events and festivals, as you'll find Bigman's Amusement Center, Don Heritage's Village, as well as the Kitchener Farmers Market going on a regular basis. Then one of the cons about living here, similarly to Hamilton, which I didn't mention, is the influx of students around the areas that have the universities. And I know some of my clients want a quieter lifestyle than the university students bring, so you can easily find those regions if you know where to look. Then the next con is it's pretty car dependent. Now, with that said, KWC does have some decent public transit, especially when we're comparing it to Grimsby, Halton Hills, Milton. It's got decent ones. It's got an LRT that runs basically connecting Cambridge all the way up to Waterloo. Got a good on a bus route. but compared to Hamilton, compared to Mississauga, it's not the best for it. Then one of the other cons that I found very interesting when researching for the Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge area was the winters, as here oftentimes the cities that we've just discussed are on Lake Ontario, and that oftentimes gets the lake effect, so it leads to less snow, less rainfall, and slightly degrees warmer. However, here, because we're not close to the lake, you are going to notice slightly colder winters and a bit more snowfall. So if you want to avoid the snowfall, it might be better to live a little bit closer to the lake. With that said, you're living in Canada regardless of the city you choose, so you're still going to get lots of snow. Now, in terms of how the real estate breaks down in the last 12 months, it was primarily detached homes, as this made up 54% of the sales, some townhomes and some condos as well to choose from, with the median detached home sale price being at $839,000, the median townhome price being at $652,000, and the condo sale price being at $435,000. And as you can see here, when you map out the areas of Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge, it's pretty much on par with purchasing a home in Guelph, a little bit more affordable than Grimsby, but a little bit more expensive than Hamilton. However, still more affordable than the rest of the regions that we've discussed in this video here. But then the final and 10th area you need to consider if you're thinking about being close to Toronto but want an affordable area, this area is going to be the most affordable, and that is Brantford. So Brantford is located just a little bit south of Kitchener-Waterloo, a little bit west of Hamilton right here, and in total, it's about an hour 40, hour 50 into Toronto, with a population being at 109,000 people. Now, one of the biggest pros about living in Brantford is the amazing amount of real estate costs. As like I mentioned, this is the most affordable area to buy a detached home. However, you are a little bit further out. Then one of the pros is the amazing parks that you can find within Brantford, from the Brant Conservation Area to the Waterworks Park to Earl Haig's Family Fun Park, as well as the Glenhurst Art Gallery. Then another pro I know some of my friends absolutely love that live in Brantford is the Brantford Elements Casino. Now, with that said, Brantford definitely has some cons associated with it. Number one is the floodplain around the Grand River. Because the Grand River runs in Brantford, occasionally, especially during the rainy season, you'll occasionally, every 50, 100 years, have a large flood of this river here that can impact some surrounding neighborhoods. So take a picture of this map if you're thinking about relocating to Brantford, and work with somebody that knows the areas that are going to be impacted possibly when this occasionally happens. Then the other negative about living in Brantford is the homeless situation. Because Brantford is more affordable, there's been a lot of gentrification going on here as well. Now, with that said, there's a lot of areas in Brantford you're not going to notice homelessness, but in the downtown area of Brantford, like the downtown area of Toronto, like the downtown area of Mississauga, or Hamilton for that matter, you're going to be noticing a higher amount of population of homeless people here as well to choose from. Then in terms of how the real estate breaks down in Brantford, as you can see, about 68% were detached home sales, only a few condos sold, and the rest were townhomes. Now, with that said, the median detached sold price in Brantford was $705,000. The median townhome price was $600,000, and the median condo sold price was $635,000. And as you can see, when you compare Brantford's median detached home price to the rest of the other 9 areas in and around the GTA West Side, you can see Brantford is the most affordable area to purchase real estate in. Now, again, if you want to learn more about the different pros and cons in each one of these regions here, check out my YouTube channel. I have a variety of videos going over that. But if you want to learn more about Hamilton's pros and cons in my most comprehensive video that I've done to date, you can find that video right here that covers the top 50 pros and cons of living in Hamilton.